Hi, my name is Gail Scott, and I am a coach, a speaker, and a channeler. And my video today is all about channeling and what is channeling and why do we have channeling existing on the planet right now? Why are there people here who are calling themselves channelers? And what actually is channeling? So this is the first video of 3. And it comes from 3 transmissions that I received explaining to any individual who's not familiar with channeling what it's all about. So let's ask the first question. So what is channeling? Well, channeling is simply a conversation between 2 individual energies, let's say. So the first thing that you kind of have to understand about energy is that every atom, every molecule, every plant, every animal, every human, everything in the world that exists has energy to it. And that energy has what's called consciousness. And consciousness is just an awareness of itself, for example. So, and units of consciousness communicate with other units of consciousness. So you could say on a bigger scale that you as an individual, you are a group of consciousnesses because you have trillions of cells within your body, and every cell that you have within your body has its own unit of consciousness, its own awareness, let's say. But when you put them all together, like we have within the human body, then we create a group unity. And so that exists within your body. And of course, it exists within everybody's body. And so you, as a unit of consciousness, you can communicate with other units of consciousnesses, other people. But what we have to understand is that that's happening all the time with everything, not just with people. It's happening with energies in chemistry, it's happening out in nature, it's happening in the skies, in the universe, it's happening within the subatomic level of Earth, it's happening within our nature environment. This communication is going on all the time. So how does this fit in with channeling? Well, channeling is when you, as a unit of consciousness, become aware that you are able to connect to another energy and that you can receive information from that energy. So you could say that you could be channeling your body because your body is giving you feedback all the time. You could say that you are channeling yourself, another part of yourself, for example, when you know things about yourself. So when channeling is described as a purpose, let's say, so for example, I call myself a channeler, it's because I've been able to connect to another consciousness level out with of my own kind of day-to-day activity, day-to-day experience. And so this is very common for people who call themselves psychics and mediums and readers and, you know, those kinds of individuals who are very intuitively guided and they just know things. So channeling is the experience of being able to receive information from another consciousness level that we're not aware of in our normal day-to-day experience. And we get to use these innate abilities and these senses within ourselves to connect to this information. So there are many different forms of channeling in the world, in the universe, in fact. So as I mentioned before, on planet Earth, the plants are channeling with each other. For example, we now know that the trees have a communication system between each other so that they know what is going on at their level. And animals out in the wild channel the energy of nature, the consciousness of nature, to help them to hunt and to help them to survive. So they are intuitively guided by the seasons, by sound, by smell, and by their own internal knowing about how to survive in the environment that they live in. Similarly, in the ocean, we have these large species of animals, whales, dolphins, and the like, who have a completely different level of consciousness to us as human beings. And they have actually had access to a certain level of consciousness for a very, very long time. And they communicate through and to each other using this kind of sonar kind of energetic connection. It's a system similar to imagining that there's an energetic ribbon that connects them all, and they use that. And if we as humans were able to decipher and access their consciousness levels, which were not available, it's not available to us right now, but if we did, we would have a lot to learn from these species. But as humans, we're now seeing that channeling is kind of coming online more and more. You will see on YouTube, there are many, many channeling people out there who are channeling different kinds of energies and communications. And so when someone is able to do that, it's because they've been able to access into either a single unit of consciousness or a group of consciousnesses. And it might be a group of energies, it might be a group of beings, it might be a group of angels, it might be one particular form of intelligence. It really doesn't matter. What happens within that individual who is the channeler is that they're able to connect to, decipher, and translate the information that's coming through them. And right now, we have a lot of that going on to assist ourselves and others on the planet. Again, this is not a secret tool that only some people have. Everybody has access to this, but it really just depends on where you're at in life in terms of purpose and what you came here to learn, and the nature of who you are as a being, as a human being on the planet, and whether or not that's something that you wish to tap into. For some of us, those of us who are channelers, it's generally because we have made a predetermined agreement before we came into physical form to be a channel. Basically, we agreed before we came here that we would be a messenger. We would assist in and bring forward messages such as the ones that I bring in to assist humanity. And we can also, access our higher selves as can everybody else. But accessing that particular aspect of ourself just means that we're tapping into a consciousness of ourselves that's in a different dimension, let's say, or a different realm or a different life that we may have already lived. And we can access not just people, but all kinds of units of consciousness, depending on our own innate abilities. So we could access the consciousness of energy or a physical form, a human being, an animal. It really just depends on what kind of skills we bring with us into this particular life. And so we're just doing an energy exchange, basically, between who we are energetically and the other part of the channeling, so to speak. So everyone can channel, but not everybody knows how to do it. So the best way to start to channel is to use your intuition, because when you're using your intuition, you're just channeling yourself. You're accessing a part of yourself that you can communicate with that's at a different vibrational level. So you may be accessing what you might call the higher self, or the God within, or your super conscious, whatever you want to call it. it doesn't really matter. It has wisdom to share with you. And so when you tap into your intuition, you can gain this information that you wouldn't have available to you in your normal day-to-day life. So for those of us who are channelers, we are generally able to tap into larger units of consciousness or higher levels of consciousness. Doesn't make us better than anybody else. It's just part of our innate abilities to be able to do that. In order to do that, we have to be able to let go of all the other things that get in the way. And we can tap into information that's really helpful and really relevant and really interesting for this kind of time that we're living in right now on planet Earth, because there's a lot of messages coming through different people. And so that's why you might tap into a particular kind of channeler or a particular kind of information that you find really useful for where you're at right now in the world. And this has been happening for a very long time. So over 100 years ago, there was a particular channeler named Edgar Cayce, and under hypnosis, he was well known in being able to tap into a wisdom around medical information for healing individuals. And at that time, this was not a common thing. And so, many people didn't understand how that worked, but it was very helpful to people at that time. He was able to bring forward information that was really relevant for those individuals who were seeking his guidance. But since then, over the last century, our consciousness has really shifted considerably. And so now there are more and more individuals who are able to access many other levels of consciousness available to us all in the universe, and to be able to bring forward these messages and this helpful information so that we can help each other as we're going through this experience that we're going through. So just in closing this part one of these 3 videos about channeling, what is channeling? Well, simply put, channeling is simply the opportunity that it offers an individual to bring forward information that's not readily accessible within your current consciousness state, consciousness level. So it's an exchange of information, an exchange of energies. And anyone can do it, and we can all do it at different levels. And those levels are what is useful for us in our current form and our current life, in our current state. And so this is just an introduction to what channeling is, a little bit of history to it. And in part 2, I will continue to explain more about how channeling is useful and what that means for you in your current life.